The following program, NORML Show Live, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate for the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate or encourage any illegal activity and advise all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws by visiting NORML.org, NORML.org. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers of NORML Show Live are their own and do not necessarily reflect the philosophy and policies of NORML. Listener discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws presents NORML Show Live, Marijuana Nation. Now, here's your host, NORML's Outreach Coordinator, Radical Russ Belville.
Good afternoon, tokers and tokettes. It is Hump Day, Wednesday, August 25th, 2010, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for joining us for the next 120 minutes of news, talk, interviews, information, music, comedy, and more by, for, and about the cannabis community, featuring our regular Daily Audio Stash podcast in the first hour, and in our second hour, your live call-ins in Toker Talk Radio. It's NORML Show Live, 2 hours of the best daily news coverage of the cannabis community. Also joining us here, running the studio and chuckling at the craziness, our own Ganja John.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, we've had a fun morning here.
You may notice that I'm not dressed.
Yeah, Russ goes, oh, I better put on a shirt at 59 after the hour.
Oh, whoops. Out of time. Out of time. So today's shirt is brought to you by Herb Age Designs. This is the new Herb Age Desert Camo.
Sick shirt.
Which is sick. It's awesome. We had the forest camo yesterday.
Yeah.
They've also got the pink camo and the black and white urban camo.
Yeah.
They're really awesome. And on the back here,
he's got a tramp stamp right there. Herb Age.
Yeah, Herb Age Designs.
So
I
love it.
I'm Herb Age's bitch now.
I'm rocking the Ganja Lion right now, the 420 FL Ganja Lion.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. We got all sorts of stuff to talk about on today's show. And of course, joining us from our virtual studio in Astoria, Oregon, my half sister, the lovely, the talented Cannabis Carrie.
Hey, beautiful Wednesday, everyone. Beautiful Wednesday.
Yes, we're having a beautiful Wednesday in the real world. In cyberspace, it ain't so beautiful, but we'll talk about that coming up in a little bit. Carrie's got our hemp headlines, which we do right after the first break. So what stories are in the news today?
Well, today we're going to go to Massachusetts and see how they're doing on their voter initiative decrim law that was passed in January 2009. We're also going to cover that Facebook fiasco that blew up yesterday. And our first story up, we're going to go to Colorado and hear what Governor Bill Ritter has to say now about medical marijuana.
Okay, great stories coming up right after this first break. At 20 after, we do our daily Toker Tunes, which is independent music from all sorts of artists, all sorts of genres. Today's genre is Irie Wednesday. We play the best in reggae, calypso, Latin, world beat music. Johnny Reeferseed from Des Moines, Iowa will be joining us with the latest tune that he's got uploaded from Cam Haley, I believe is the name of the artist. Dreadhead, yeah, something like that. And then at 30 past, we visit with Dr. Mitch Earlywine for our Ask Dr. Mitch segment, Cannabis Science, where you can ask your live questions via our chat room or via our live phone number, 971-533-7111. Don't call yet. 30 past the hour, we'll get on the line with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. You can ask your live questions. And then in hour 2, it's Toker Talk Radio. Some of the topics today we're going to cover Big Pharma. Is it really evil, or is it just another corporation or set of corporations? We'll get your opinions on that. Also, we'll talk a little bit about Facebook itself and some of the insanity out there. And I'm going to name names today.
Yep, we're doing it.
They name my name, we'll name your name. It's NORML Show Live. Stick around. We're back after this.
You're listening to NORML Show Live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, or NORML, invites you to our 39th Annual National Conference, Legalization, Just Say Now, Thursday, September 9th through Saturday, September 11th, 2010, at the opulent Governor's Hotel in downtown Portland.
The war on drugs has been a more failed, and I think that we need to rethink and reformalize our marijuana laws.
Extend your visit through Sunday, September 12th, and you can also attend the free two-day Portland Hempstock, the largest outdoor cannabis and music festival in Oregon.
I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Just Say Now. The NORML National Conference, September 9th through 11th in Portland, Oregon. Details available on the web at norml.org/conference or by calling 202-483-5500.
Medical marijuana, industrial hemp, consumer cannabis. It's time for this week's NORML News with Cannabis Carrie.
In Colorado, Governor Bill Ritter has found that medical marijuana registrations have helped his state by covering $9 million towards a $60 million fiscal emergency. A Colorado medical marijuana card costs $90 per year to register. 2010 has been a big year for registration in the Centennial State. Colorado had just 41,000 registrants at the end of 2009, and it is estimated that the state of Colorado will end the year with around 150,000 applicants for medical marijuana cards. Backers of medical marijuana legislation in a number of cities and states have long argued that the revenue from possible taxes and fees are a large reason to support cannabis law reform at this time of tight fiscal funding and budget deficits nationwide. Governor Ritter is also cutting funding for the Department of Corrections, taking money from severance taxes and federal mineral lease revenues from local communities, and putting $40 million of local severance tax federal lease grants on hold in case the economy continues to worsen. As the Colorado medical marijuana program continues to grow at this record pace, the state is also learning that the extra money the program is bringing in can also be used as a safety net. Governor Ritter said he didn't support the medical marijuana initiative, but he concedes it's the law, and he believes it's constitutional to use those revenues to balance the budget, leaving only $1 million in the fund of the $10 million the program raised this year. The Colorado medical marijuana program is expecting even larger revenues in 2011, with new dispensary fees and more Coloradans joining the program every month.
Wow. The first thing that, jumps out to me is jumping from 41,000 registrants to 150,000 registrants in 1 year. We saw something similar in Montana, jumping from 2,000 to 12,000 in 1 year, and it all has to do with the availability of marijuana at dispensaries and the Holder memo, the Attorney General Holder, saying that the federal government wouldn't waste precious resources going after those dispensaries. When people have a chance to be legal and safe, they take it. What do you know? Now, as far as this $9 million in funds goes, however, it should be noted that when Colorado passed their Amendment 20, the money that was generated for the funds was only supposed to go to support that program, to make it a self-funding program. But what do you know? There's some money lying around in the only state budget that is running a surplus, and the Colorado government finds a way to dip their fingers into that pool. This is not news by any stretch of the imagination. The same thing happened here in Oregon. Oregon has a self-funded medical marijuana program for which patients pay $100 to get their card, $20 if they're on low income, and that program was running a $920,000 surplus when the state of Oregon, I believe it was in 2007 or maybe 08, wrote a bill to transfer that money from the state's medical marijuana program to cover other budget shortfalls by DHS. It's kind of a good news, bad news situation. The bad news is here's this money that's supposed to support these programs being taken away from these programs, without the consent of the people. That's not what the people intended. But the good news of it is we're getting government used to the idea of making money on marijuana. We're getting government used to the idea that having it legalized in some form is better for them in the long term than keeping it illegal. So it's good that we're getting them into that mindset. But again, we're talking about patients in this situation, right? We're talking about taxing and charging fees to sick and disabled people who happen to choose one particular medicine in order to make up budget deficits for the state, right? It's because it's a medicine that is sometimes thought of as an illegal drug by some people, and it carries all of that stigma and all of that that social pressure against it that makes it easy for them to go after that money. They know that there's not going to be a big hue and cry. They know that the programs themselves are still going to function and run. I mean, really, when they've got a surplus, taking that surplus doesn't affect the program, doesn't cause people to lose their cards or cause the program to run more inefficiently. It was a surplus after all. But once again, it just shows how we need to keep fighting for full legalization. I really don't have much of a problem with government wanting to, have fees or taxes for those of us who just want cannabis, that just want to use it. I have a little bit of an issue with the idea of calling it sin taxes or thinking that it needs to be taxed as much as tobacco or alcohol, since cannabis doesn't cause the harms that tobacco or alcohol cause. But when we're talking about charging fees and taxing patients who are suffering, God, that just sounds a little ghoulish to me.
News from Massachusetts came out this week that some smaller towns have all but given up enforcing a law that decriminalizes the possession of small amounts of marijuana, citing the law is written with too many loopholes to be effective. The decrim law, passed as a ballot measure in November of 2008, established a civil fine of $100 for those caught with an ounce or less of marijuana. That has replaced what had been a criminal offense carrying a maximum penalty of 6 months in jail and a $500 fine for less than an ounce of cannabis. The law does not require offenders to correctly identify themselves, nor does it provide a way to force them to pay the fines. The 2008 law has led to a patchwork of enforcement across the state, with some communities handing out hundreds of civil citations and others turning a blind eye towards personal marijuana use. Wayne Sampson, executive director for the Massachusetts Chief of Police, said this week that a number of communities have tried but have simply just given up. Police officials say that infractions like speeding tickets have repercussions for those that don't pay their fines, but in the case of possession of less than an ounce of cannabis, the only recourse for the city and town clerks is to take offenders who don't pay the $100 fine to small claims court, which really isn't worth their time or effort. New Bedford Police Chief Ronald Teachman said that ticketing of the individuals isn't effective without a backup or other consequences for non-payment of fines. The law doesn't require people caught with small amounts of marijuana to provide identification either. So if someone says their name is Ronald McDonald or Oliver Twist, there is nothing in the law that allows them to ask for further positive identification. Police chiefs throughout the state are pushing for legislation to strengthen the laws to enforce and require offenders to identify themselves. Springfield, for example, has handed out 730 citations since the new law took effect in January of 2009, and the Springfield Police Department has said that citizens are still very conscious that marijuana is not legal. Some cities and towns have passed bylaws prohibiting marijuana use in public and have greatly increased fines for public use. Supporters of the ballot measure said law enforcement officers already have all the tools they need to enforce the law effectively, and the new law has not ushered in an era in which consumers can smoke with impunity. Our own executive director of NORML, Alan St. Pierre, says that decriminalization is never society sanctioning the use of marijuana. It is reducing the cost of interaction with police.
Wow. Okay. So throughout that whole story and all I've read about Massachusetts decriminalization law and the fallout since 2008, there's always one part missing to the story. The harm. Okay, so you got this law that says you can ticket people $100 for having less than an ounce, but you don't really have a realistic mechanism for collecting the $100, nor identifying the people who you'd be collecting the $100 from. And so because of that, what? Because of that, what? What is the harm that is being caused in the state of Massachusetts by people being able to carry around an ounce of weed or less with impunity? What is the harm? What is the problem that we need to so desperately fix the Massachusetts decrim here? Now, maybe there's one point they could say, well, we're not making the money. We're not making the $100 that we thought we'd make off of busting pot smokers. Well, right there, if that's the excuse, then you're pointing out to us that there really is no harm that you're trying to stop from marijuana use. It's money that you want to make off marijuana users, like you always have, back before decriminalization, when you were busting us and taking us through courts and handing out fines to us and putting us in jail and requiring high amounts of bail and so on. It's a money issue, isn't it, Massachusetts? It's not a problem with the people running around with an ounce in their pocket or who happen to be smoking weed somewhere. That's not the issue. You have failed to point out what is the harm from not being able to ticket these people.
Facebook is facing criticism that political debate on the world's largest social networking site is a censored nanny state of affairs. The group Just Say Now, a pro-marijuana legalization group that is working to get California's Prop 19 passed, has found out that their ads to help the group's fan page grow have been censored and pulled by Facebook on charges that the image of a marijuana leaf was no longer acceptable for use in Facebook ads. Now, there are plenty of iconic marijuana leaf icons that can be found on Facebook pages, but the leaf in question was on an ad that was to get 38 million impressions for the group. Initially, Facebook accepted the ads from the group Just Say Now, but then they had a change of heart and abruptly removed the ads last week. An email from Facebook spokesman Andrew Noyes was sent to the group saying, quote, "The image in question was no longer acceptable for use in Facebook ads. The image of a pot leaf is classified with all smoking products and therefore is not acceptable under our policies." However, Facebook's ad rules only ban promotion of tobacco products, not smoking in general. The censorship is a blow to the campaign, which is gathering signatures on college campuses calling for legalization and registering young people to vote. Michael Whitney of FireDogLake.com, a blog that is part of the Just Say No coalition, says that it is like running a campaign and not being allowed to show the candidate's face. Now, the story made the front page feature story on Huffington Post yesterday and had over 6,000 comments, largely supportive of the Just Say Now group. Other blogs and news outlets have agreed to run the ad, and Just Say Now has launched a Facebook petition asking people on the social networking site to replace their profile picture with an image of a censored pot leaf. The group is arguing that by censoring a marijuana leaf, Facebook is banning political speech. Since the Just Say Now group has come out against Facebook, the Libertarian Party has also come forward, as well as the District of Columbia Patients Cooperative, that also had their ads for their groups initially approved and then after rejected by Facebook because of the iconic pot leaf placed in the ad. The DC Patients Cooperative was using targeted Facebook ads to rally community support for the DC medical cannabis law that has been placed on hold or had been placed on hold for 12 years by Congress. Nicholas Schiller from that group said the group had largely organized through Facebook and their efforts were severely hampered after the ad ban. Those ads ran from January of this year until May, when they were unceremoniously yanked at a critical time right before the district council hearings with elected officials was about to happen. Facebook objects to the leaf in ads for medicinal marijuana as well, something that limits many groups and states trying to pass medicinal marijuana laws and connecting with voters over the popular networking site. If Facebook continues to censor ads pertaining to all things cannabis, a very powerful networking tool has been taken out of the arsenal of cannabis activists worldwide.
Well, I'm going to have to save this for the radical rant at the end of the show because I got plenty to say about Facebook. The title of my rant is "Banning Marijuana Leaves on Facebook is like banning pictures of Martin Luther King in barbershops." Come on now. Everybody on Facebook is talking about weed. There's a million pages on Facebook where people talk and show weed and show their weed pictures and even make connections to buy and sell weed on Facebook. We've got games on it. You've heard of the
Stoner Farm.
Stoner Farm. Yeah, there's you've heard of Farmville and Mafia Wars that you get on Facebook, that annoying crap that goes around all the time.
Yeah.
There's a game out there called Pot Farm and another game called Pot Island. Don't seem to be banning those. And the reason why? Well, they don't mind making the money off the weed, right? And the people that smoke the weed. It's just like Showtime. They don't mind showing weeds on cable, but try to get an ad on CBS for marijuana legalization for NORML, and you saw all the hoops we had to jump through before we got that up on Times Square. People like NBC Universal, they have no problem selling Cheech and Chong DVDs, but God forbid you try to have some discussion of marijuana legalization on NBC in BC. It's the same story everywhere. They got no problem making money off of the people that use marijuana. They want to keep things like Pot Farm and Pot Island so that your little eyeballs will be glued to Facebook and you can see all the Bud Light ads that are popping up on Facebook. Bud Light. Do you realize that 1 out of every 4 beers sold in America is a Bud Light? Isn't that amazing? Let's take a break.
It is certainly break time here at Normal Show Live.
Oh my, it is break time. We're going to take ourselves a special break, and when we return, we've got your 420 music for Irie Wednesday. Stick around, it's Normal Show Live.
It's 20 after the hour, and we have to take a short break, if you know what I mean. Please support these sponsors who support Normal Show Live.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
The fact is today, people don't go to jail for possession of marijuana. I know you like to pretend it does, and there's a lot of misinformation about that, but finding somebody in jail or prison for a first-time nonviolent offender for possession of marijuana is like finding a unicorn. You find one, you will make a big story because it doesn't exist. Finding somebody in jail or prison for a first-time nonviolent offender for possession of marijuana is like finding a unicorn, finding a unicorn, finding a unicorn.
Normal Show Live, the National Wildlife Refuge for Marijuana Unicorns.
I'm gonna light me a pipe of inspiration. I'm gonna blow away troubles on my head. I'm gonna leave this plastic place to the plastic people race and travel to a better place and travel to a better place and travel to a better place instead.
Or to support legalizing and taxing marijuana use. I think it's time for debate.
Normal Show Live.
And I think that we ought to study very carefully on what other countries are doing that have legalized marijuana and other drugs.
Marijuana Nation.
I saw him hanging there afterwards, a celebration party after the Mr. Olympia smoking a joint. Did he really smoke a joint? And did he in fact inhale?
Saying I'm in need of change. I'm in need of change. See, I used to get high.
It's time for your daily Toker Tunes, the best in 420 friendly music from all genres that uplifts, entertains, and informs the public. Today we get tunes for Irie Wednesday, our celebration of that mellow vibe we find in the best of reggae, ska, calypso, and Latin music. Brought to you by Johnny Reefer Seed and the High Rollers in Des Moines, Iowa. America's favorite red-eyed soul rock and roll band. Now available on iTunes and CD, baby. If you'd like to submit your song to be played on Normal Show Live, send it to us at stash@normal.org. Now here's some more great independent marijuana music for today's Daily Toker Tunes.
Welcome back, everyone. 23 after the hour. Johnny Reefer Seed can't be with us today. He's busy getting his tunes on CD, baby. So I will go ahead and read the intro that he loaded up on the stash for us. Cass Haley is a singer-guitarist from Paris, Texas. His self-titled album charted as the number 8 best-selling reggae album of 2008 on the Billboard charts. Raised by musician parents, Cass grew up surrounded by the sounds of blues and 60s and 70s rock. He got serious about the guitar at age 12 and was taught by the tribe of musicians passing through the house. Also prominent at home were Bob Marley records his mother would play, which made a profound impression. After a period of heavy immersion in the sounds of ska, punk, skateboard culture, Cass was blown away by the classic reggae pop of bands like UB40 and Sublime, and his mature style began to take shape. His crystalline voice and funky, easygoing beats earned Cass a second-place finish on America's Got Talent, which in turn netted him a measure of fame and a following. But the contest also locked the Texan singer-songwriter-guitarist into a major label deal that didn't feel right. So, not wanting to be turned into a manufactured product, he struck out on his own. The superb result? Connection, a collection of songs basking in the philosophical and musical maturity that comes from staying true to his artistic vision. Today's Irie Wednesday Toker tune, Dreadhead Dream, is from Cass Haley's self-titled debut album. Learn more about Cass Haley and purchase his music on iTunes, or check out our links in the Daily Toker Tunes on stash.normal.org after 3 p.m. Pacific today. This is Cass Haley and Dreadhead Dream.
I'll really bounce my mind through time, yeah. I said I looked at him close, I really could this be the man that I knew as a boy Marley. I didn't know what to do. I said he looked at me, he said listen to you. Gotta listen to all he has to say. Gotta listen to all he has to say. Yes, you do. Gotta listen to all he has to say. Well, you know you do. Alright, what you know. But the way you know you gotta go. Up against that tree, the man looked at me, a look in his eye. It almost made me cry with a man who rhyme. I bounce my mind through time, unleashing his flow, unleashing my soul. Gotta listen to all he has to say. Gotta listen to all he has to say. Yes, you do. Gotta listen to all he has to say. Well, you know you do. To all he has to say. Gotta listen to all he has to say. Yes, you do. Gotta listen to all he has to say. Well, you know you do. Alright, what you know. But the way you know you got to go. Yeah, you do. You know, where you know you gotta go. Said I listen up.
You want a copy of that song for your iPod? Check out the Daily Toker Tunes at the Stash blog by surfing to stash.normal.org and choosing Media and then Toker Tunes from the main menu.
It only comes twice a day, but I don't care. It's 4:20 somewhere.
Welcome back, everyone. 28 after the hour, time for NORML's Cannabis Community Calendar, which you can find at normal.org/calendar. And before we get all ramped up into the calendar, I want to wish a happy birthday to one of our own, White Talon.
White Talon, stop looking at me like that. You're creeping me out.
Happy 27th WT. I hope you're smoking a good one for your birthday. All right, looking at the calendar of events, Wednesday, August 25th to 9th, Cincinnati's Fountain Square Reggae Night is taking place at 5th and Vine in Cincinnati, Ohio. Contact Miami Valley NORML, that's in central Ohio there. You can reach them at info@mvnormal.org. Also, Grand Traverse Compassion Connection meeting is happening in Traverse City, Michigan. You can reach them at gtcompassionconnection.org. On Thursday, August 26th, the Orton Park Festival is taking place in Madison, Wisconsin. Madison NORML will be tabling there. On Friday, August 27th, the Olmsted 2010 Music Festival is taking place in Franklin, Ohio. This is a homegrown Cincinnati festival, and again, Miami Valley NORML will be tabling there. This weekend as well, Friday, Saturday, is the Jefferson State Music Festival in Grants Pass, Oregon. I will be appearing there, performing music as well as speaking at this Southern Oregon Festival. So I hope to meet some people down there. We will have our show on Friday, however. My time for playing has been moved from Friday to Saturday. So we will have our Friday show with special guest Danny Danko from High Times answering your live call-in cultivation questions. That should be a good time. But for those of you who can make it out on the weekend, Saturday, come on down to Grants Pass. Love to see you. Also, Oregon NORML is having their twice monthly cardholders meeting. This takes place at the Oregon NORML World Famous Cannabis Cafe, 322 Southeast 82nd Avenue in Portland, Oregon. For more information, check out ornorml.org. And to get all the contacts, phone numbers, email addresses, websites, and more for all of these events, check out NORML's Cannabis Community Calendar at norml.org/calendar.
Starfish Designs, makers of the original Gandalf.
I'm Radical Russ, and when I want to relax, I always have my 17-inch long original Gandalf from Starfish Designs nearby. The hand-blown borosilicate glass is strong and easy to clean, and the design is sleek and sophisticated. Starfish Designs are available from Bend, Oregon at a glass retailer near you. For locations, call 541-788-GLASS. That's 541-788-4527. NORML Show Live reminds you to never consent to a search. If you're holding and you consent, in most states you will be arrested immediately and you will go to jail. If you don't consent to a search, police may try to intimidate you by threatening to bring in drug-sniffing dogs or try to fool you by saying things will go easier if you consent. Yeah, easier for them, sure. Stand your ground, refuse the search, and ask the officer if you're free to go. If they still detain you and eventually find your contraband, you'll be no more busted than if you had allowed the search. But by refusing the search, your attorney has a chance to win your acquittal before a judge. If you consent to the search, your attorney's hands are tied. You can find a list of NORML Legal Committee attorneys specializing in marijuana cases by visiting the Find a Lawyer link at norml.org.
It's time for NORML Show Live's Cannabis Science with Dr. Mitch Earlywine. Dr. Earlywine is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York in Albany and the author of Understanding Marijuana. Now here's your dose of cannabis science.
Welcome back, everyone. 32 after the hour, and we're taking your live questions on cannabis science for Dr. Mitch Earlywine. The number is on the board, 971-533-7111. You can Skype Radical Russ, or you can type your questions in on the chat, and Cannabis Carrier will get them to me. And Dr. Mitch, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much.
We always start off by finding out the latest in cannabis science. Any new studies or information to impart to our audience?
I'm reviewing a confidential paper right now, so I can't give a lot of details, but stuff we talked about before from basically the Parents' Guide to Marijuana is proving true in the data, particularly the idea that if you spend time with your kids, even just doing jobs around the house together, that seems to be a great buffer against drug problems. So a lot of folks email me like, I want to spend time with my kids, I don't really know what to do. Look around and say, oh, here's a little project, and we can stand next to each other and talk while, I wash the dishes and you dry, and what a surprise, this is actually showing up later on as something that really helps out in the long run.
All right. That sounds interesting. And, I also wanted to ask you a question before we got started, because we talk to you every week about marijuana history, marijuana culture, marijuana science. But I want to make sure people understand the breadth of the research that you're doing out there. What things aside from looking at marijuana are you studying there at University of Albany?
Well, right now my lab is taking a good look at drug use and post-traumatic stress disorder, and not just cannabis, although that looks rather promising, but alcohol and a lot of negative effects on some of those. And I think it's fair to say CBD and alcohol just don't mix too well. Mm-hmm. And then we've got some other work basically on intoxication and unsafe sex, trying to make sure that everybody's good about putting a condom on their willy.
Good about putting the condom on their willy. Okay. I love it when doctors say willy. That's great. All right. Let's go to our questions here. We've got a few that are coming in through chat, and you can also call us at 971-533-7111. This one's coming in from Brian, who wants to know, vaporizer or joint? I'm going to add to this. Vaporizer, joint, bong, or pipe. What system delivers the most cannabinoids to a person?
So if you're just going to do best ratio THC to nasty stuff, vaporizer is going to be the best. If you want max absolute THC, joint is probably the best, but obviously you're going to get some things in there that you wouldn't normally get in the vaporizer. Bong, even though THC is not water soluble, the water does actually trap some cannabinoids, and so it does seem to take a little more. And I'm always a little apprehensive about the bong because although it cools the smoke, it makes people hold hits longer when that's really not necessary and gives the opportunity for irritants to kind of basically connect with the lung tissue in a way that's probably not essential to get all the THC absorbed. And that's pretty much the story. Pipes, the issue tends to be heat, and the length of that stem is really critical, but they're often relatively close to the joint.
Okay, great. Now, I've got a caller calling in from the 317 area code, but I messed up on setting up the call. I should have called out to you rather than Carrie, but I can put you on hold for a second while I get this caller. So I'll get the question and bring it back to you in just a second. Is that good, Doctor?
Sure thing.
Okay, hold on just a moment. All right, we go to the 317 area code. What's your question for Dr. Mitch Earlywine?
This is actually Whitetown. Last week there was a specialist who was talking about the eyes and getting red eye. And I never really ever do get red eye from smoking weed. And I was wondering if there was a reason why that would stop the red eye from actually happening.
Okay, let's see. Dr. Mitch, the question here comes from White Talon, and he's saying how we talked to a person who's an eye specialist, and they talked about, getting the red eyes from smoking pot. But White Talon says that he doesn't get red eyes from smoking pot. What's going on, and is there certain types of pot that make eyes redder, or certain people who don't get red eyes?
We don't see a ton of formal research on this because there's just not a lot of funding to get it done. There seems to be a subset of folks who don't necessarily get red eyes, but will often have dry eyes and a sort of glazed look over the cornea that's, not your stereotypical roadmap, but definitely a detection of something different. And unfortunately, we don't know what the predictors of this are, in part because there's just not a lot of funding for this kind of work. I assure you that if you don't get red eyes, there are a number of people out there who really envy you, and your Visine bill is probably a lot lower than theirs.
Okay. By the way, folks, if you want to ask your questions, you can get them in on the chat room, and Carrie will paste them over to me. You can also call in 971-533-7111, but I messed up, so I'd rather that you chatted. If you could, if you really have a question that needs to be answered, go ahead and call in. We'll put Dr. Mitch on hold again, but we'll go with the chat questions that we've got lined up here. Our next question coming in wants to know, is it possible to claim disability with ADHD and then use medical marijuana to treat that said ADHD?
The claims for disability vary a lot state to state, so I can't say something that would apply federally. It looks like that diagnosis, particularly in adults, is going to get a lot of challenge when the DSM-5 comes out, the new Diagnostic and Statistical Manual put out by the American Psychiatric Association. So if it is at all possible, it may be only for a little while now. As far as treatment for ADHD with cannabis, despite the number of effusive case examples we have for it, we don't have a randomized clinical trial or anything even close to that. Even formal large-scale correlational work hasn't been published yet, and as I mentioned last week I'm trying to get cleared for the ethics committee to run a study along those lines, so we'll see what happens.
All right. We're getting some response from the chat room on that question, too. Corvair Kid claims that Georgia recognizes severe ADHD as a disability. My problem with the question would be the fact that of the 14 medical marijuana states, only California recognizes treatment for any other condition for which marijuana could provide relief, aka ADHD, insomnia, anxiety, and so on. So even if you were able to claim disability, you'd probably only be able to get that in California as far as I'm aware. Okay, let's see. Question coming in from Rolla J, and I know you're in New York and you are a psychologist, but Rolla J wants to know, do you or have you ever given recommendations for medical marijuana? And I assume meaning leading to someone getting their state card.
In fact, as a psychologist, I never prescribed any medication, so even my recommendation wouldn't be worth anything the way most states are set up. I have mentioned to friends in psychiatry, folks with MDs, that I thought cannabis would be helpful for a client, and the client then was referred over to that person, but that was a lot easier to do when I was in California.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the phones for just a second, so you'll be on hold for a moment while I get the question. We'll repeat it for you. This is an unknown phone caller, so I can't even tell you where they're calling from, but you're on the air. What's your question for Dr. Mitch?
Hello?
Yes, what's your question for Dr. Mitch, please?
Fuck you, man. Tell that motherfucker to suck my dick, man.
We've been rickrolled. That's great.
Is that Lex?
It could be. It could be. All right. Sorry about that. Dr. Mitch, you're glad that you were on hold for that one. That was a prank caller, unfortunately. So we'll go on to our chat lines here. A man named Truth wants to know, does smoking before bed contribute to sleep eating?
Again, we don't have a ton of published data, but I have at least 4 very effusive emails in my box saying that this is absolutely the case. Sleeping right before bed is very strain dependent on what that's going to do to folks, and generally strains that have a lot of cannabidiol are the ones that seem to help a lot of folks fall asleep. THC is usually the source of the appetite effects, so if you've got a strain with a little of each, obviously the chance of both falling asleep and then waking up in the middle of the night and raiding the fridge are pretty high. I would recommend, if this is an issue for you, first of all, putting an extra, which seems to work for quite a few people, whether they use cannabis or not, with the nocturnal binge eating, and just something that will interfere with the getting in there seems to help. And also smoking a little earlier in the evening, and so then essentially the impact of the THC in particular will have dissipated by the time you hit the head.
Okay. Question coming in from Ion Drive mentions that he has a friend who has a sleep disorder. He tried the mouth jaw brace. I don't know what that is. Maybe something to help with the disorder. The sleep apnea thing?
I think a bruxism guard is what he's talking about.
Oh, the grinding teeth thing?
Yeah, TNJ.
Oh, okay. And so he says, I suggested to him to smoke a joint. It works for me. Will it help him sleep at night?
So I've had 2 people email me saying that this is the case, and generally that can be helpful, but this is a really serious condition. You can end up not only grinding your teeth, but actually wearing the cartilage out in your jaw and creating a whole lot of problems. As in severe cases, actually wire your jaw shut for a while so that you get out of the habit of doing this. This also seems to happen in folks who are under a lot of stress or high in anxiety in the first place. So a lot of the standard relaxation techniques and stress reduction, time management stuff seems to help these folks. But I encourage people to intervene early on this, because if you wait, you can end up needing much more severe interventions. And I know that jaw holding thing is a big drag for a lot of folks with bruxism. But there's another one where an alarm will go off if you grind your teeth, and I've had 2 clients say, boy, it is hell for the first couple of weeks, but then you really do learn to stop doing that in your sleep.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I've heard of people having that, bruxism, your teeth grinding like that. I didn't know a whole lot about it. I wanted to follow up on something you mentioned a couple of questions ago before we get more questions from the chat line for Dr. Mitch Earlywine, and that is, you mentioned the DSM-5 coming out. And DSM-4, DSM-3, they've all gone through progressions and changed over the years. Are there any changes in store for marijuana with respect to the DSM-5 as far as designating marijuana addiction or marijuana dependence or characterizing that as some sort of mental illness?
The clincher here will probably be that the diagnosis of abuse will disappear. So the diagnosis of abuse is something I've come out against in the past because you only need one symptom in the previous year and then you get the diagnosis. And one of the symptoms of abuse was repeated legal problems. And this just drove me bananas because, you'd have somebody who came drinking a fifth a day but had never had any legal problems because alcohol is legal. And then I get somebody who had, 2 cannabis busts in a year, and I was supposed to give that person an abuse diagnosis because that's repeated legal problems. Well, I'm delighted to say a number of folks who are on that task force have decided that this whole abuse-dependence distinction is a racket, and we need to go back to thinking about dependence or problems on a continuum rather than trying to say you have it or you don't. And I'm hoping that this ends up in the final version.
Okay, and we have time for one last question here for Dr. Mitch Earlywine. If you didn't get your question asked on today's show, you can always send it to him by email. The email address is 420research@gmail.com, 420research@gmail.com. And our final question comes in from Master Ty, who says that he uses a vapor gun to be able to vaporize his cannabis, but he uses that vapor gun on a water pipe or a bong so that the vapor is going through water and then through ice in the chamber or of the bong. Is that good for vaporization, or does it make any difference?
Odds are high if he's not turning up the heat too much. He could use the vapor directly out of the gun, and although it might not be exactly as cool, it would actually have less opportunity for THC to get trapped, which is often what happens when things go through water and ice.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Mitch Earlywine, for joining us every Wednesday here for our Cannabis Science segment, and to our unknown caller who called in and sullied this wonderful segment. You will be edited out of the podcast, so you really didn't accomplish much. Next time, only the caller ID'd callers will be getting through. Thanks so much, Dr. Mitch. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Thank you. Bye now.
It's tough talking to kids about marijuana, especially if you might be a parent who dabbled a time or two in your youth. So to help you out, get your copy of Dr. Mitch Earlywine's latest book, A Parent's Guide to Marijuana. Dr. Earlywine is an associate professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and an expert on the studies concerning marijuana, its effect on health and society, and the methodology behind the statistics. He is a frequent guest here on our daily audio stash. Dr. Earlywine lays it all out without the propaganda and scare tactics that parents know won't work with teenagers. He presents a rational understanding of cannabis, what it is and what it isn't, and why kids shouldn't be using marijuana. You can order today through Amazon.com or check our links at our blog, stash.normal.org.
You want answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended the Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical rant.
48 after the hour, time to do a little bit of ranting about this whole Facebook thing. Facebook banned the pot leaf ad being used by Students for Sensible Drug Policy and liberal blog Fire Dog Lake in their Just Say Now campaign. And the ad was just a little cartoon balloon with a sketch of a pot leaf. Not even a picture, a sketch of a pot leaf in it. Now, this ad had been running for a couple weeks or longer, had already generated massive publicity and hits and networking for the Fire Dog Lake SSDP coalition when Facebook called back and said they're banning the pot leaf. And I kind of characterize this as banning the pot leaf in a Facebook ad is like banning pictures of Martin Luther King in a barber shop. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The folks at Fire Dog Lake characterized it as saying that a political campaign couldn't put out posters with their candidate's face on it. Because we're talking about pot here. We're talking about legalizing marijuana. And if you cannot show a picture of what you're trying to legalize, it makes it kind of hard to get the message across, especially in this hyper speed, internet fueled world where you've only got 3 seconds to catch someone's attention. If you're going to write out in text, help us legalize marijuana, maybe the word marijuana catches someone's eye, maybe it doesn't. But the pot leaf, that catches the eye. And I've pointed out how Facebook is just rife with pot leafs all over it. Look at, plenty of Facebook pages out there. Hundreds, thousands, millions of Facebook pages out there that have pot leafs all over them. So it's not a question as to whether or not the pot leaf is offensive. But I wanted to talk about that concept, because it's not just Facebook that's done it. There's been other places and organizations and media outlets that have banned the image of the leaf of a plant. Wrap your mind around that. It's very telling to me how much some people freak out over the sight of a cannabis leaf. It's like they have a visceral revulsion to nature. Ron Reagan Jr., the son of the president, he once said, quote, "The illegality of marijuana rests less on what it is than what it represents. Nature, dissent, introspection. It's not marijuana, the mildly psychotropic weed, we condemn, but marijuana, the nemesis of the state." And I believe that, because I believe the pot leaf is a symbol. It's being banned because of its symbolism, not because of what it is. They're not banning it because it is associated with smoking products, like they tried to say, but because it represents nature, and more specifically, mankind's repression of nature for profit and control. Now look, I grew up back when MTV played music videos on television. Really? They used to play music videos on television, John.
Now they only do it in the morning, and it's only like Lil Wayne.
Yeah, back in my day, I'm telling you, we used to watch videos on television.
Bruce Springsteen videos.
That's right, by gum, and Courtney Cox was an unknown, I'm telling you. All right, so, yeah, I used to watch music videos on television. I remember growing up, and they used to censor out the pot leaf, right? If some rocker, let's say Black Crowes is out there and they got a pot leaf patch on their shirt, they'd blur that out, right? Or if it was a Snoop Dogg or some rapper with some bling, a pot leaf bling, that gets blurred out, right? But the cans of beer, the cigarettes, the cigars, the 40 ouncers, the bottles of Cristal, those aren't blurred out. Right? So it's not about, are we sending a bad message to the kids about abuse of drugs? No, that's not it. It's marijuana, the nemesis of those legal drug dealers, because, you can make it yourself. That's the one that has to be censored. I pointed out how much Facebook advertises with Bud Light, and how Bud Light sells 1 out of every 4 beers sold in America. They don't want their ads having to compete with natural marijuana now, do they? And after all this banning of the picture of a leaf of a plant, guess what? I still turned out to smoke pot. A whole lot of pot, as a matter of fact. I learned a whole lot about cannabis, even as you tried to censor the very sight of it. More than half the people my age that you protected from Snoop Dogg singing about smoking endo back in 1994 went on to smoke endo anyway.
And not sip on gin and juice.
And not sip on gin. I hate gin.
I hate gin.
Tastes like pine needles.
Yeah.
I don't know why I know what pine needles taste like, but...
Idaho.
Yeah, it's an Idaho thing. And so when I made my post on this, I got to thinking about what other natural plant leaves might Facebook consider banning, right? I got this picture up on the blog, stash.normal.org, of a pair of hands holding coca leaves. Now, coca leaves, you can chew those, right? Mm-hmm. Right as they are and get a buzz from them. Yeah. Or you can process them and make them into cocaine. But I haven't heard about Facebook having a problem showing a coca leaf. Or an opium poppy. I got a picture of an opium poppy. Is opium poppy, is that associated with smoking products, right? Because you can smoke opium, right? In fact, that's one of the first drugs that was smoked recreationally in this country was opium. Is opium poppy, is that banned in Facebook ads? Or here's a picture of the Amanita muscaria mushroom. It's got a white stem and a red cap with little spots on it. It's a character in the damn Mario Brothers game.
I love those mushrooms.
It's a Mario Brothers character. Do they advertise Mario Brothers on Facebook by any chance? I mean, there's a damn Amanita muscaria mushroom bouncing through the little things, and the kids are chasing after it. And when they eat it, the little character gets big and it gets small. I mean, come on now.
Nintendo did make me take mushrooms.
It's all Nintendo's fault. Are we banning those now, Facebook? Look, if they are trying to argue about whether or not we're condoning the use of drugs, I mean, at least the ones not being advertised on Facebook, if that's the problem, how does an image of the leaf of a plant condone the misuse of that plant? How does that really work? Because it's not as if a lot of us are out there smoking leaf. Right? It's not like we're picking leaves off of marijuana and rolling those up and smoking them. God, I hope not.
I've never understood that.
So
we throw those away.
That's it. Or you make something else out of them, right? But the leaf itself, right? That's just decoration to the plant. We're after the buds, right? So if they were trying to make the case about, promoting the use of drugs, promoting the use of cannabis for your body, whatever, however they want to characterize it. I was going to say intoxicant, but it's not an intoxicant.
No.
If that's what they want to characterize, I could see them banning a picture of a joint or a bong or a pipe or a chillum or people chiefing green buds or even a big sticky green bud itself, like on a High Time Centerfold.
Right.
I could at least understand the tenuous thread of shaky logic, supporting that. You're trying to ban, the images of people using drugs. Okay, ban the joint, ban the bong. I understand where you're going there. But this is the leaf. You can't consider the picture of the leaf to be misuse. Well, unless you're saying that people that smoke leaves are misusing pot. They should smoke the buds. I mean, I guess maybe that's their point. Oh, come on. No, that's ridiculous. Doesn't work. What it is here is really about banning political speech. The folks at SSDP and Fire Dog Lake are exactly right about this. They're not just banning the image of a beneficial herb that some people might misuse. They are banning public speech in the public square advocating for changing marijuana laws. Now, I know that the 21st century, we've got the internet and cyberspace and social networks, and our laws are still kind of barely in the 20th century with respect to understanding free speech and petition your government for a redress of grievances and censorship and all that. But to me, the way I look at it, Facebook is the public square now. Right? This would be, like they said, banning a political candidate or telling a political candidate what image he could put on his political posters that he tacks up on the utility poles around town. This is the public square. And here's the thing, their spokesman from Facebook says, quote, that they do not allow ads for marijuana or political ads for the promotion of marijuana. Now that's ironic to me because some of you are actually listening to me from a download from our Facebook page for NORML. NORML has an incredibly popular Facebook page. NORML has an incredibly popular Legalize It cause, which I believe is over 500,000 followers now. So it's not as if Facebook doesn't realize there's political advocacy going on. And in fact, in these later statements, the Facebook people have said, we don't have a problem with the legalization ad, just as long as it doesn't have a pot leaf in it. How are we supposed to put out ads to legalize marijuana if we can't show people what marijuana looks like? It's insane. There is nothing about the pot leaf that is promoting the use of marijuana. There's nothing about the pot leaf that is promoting people to not use marijuana. It's an image of nature. It is no more political in nature, no more political than the picture of a sunset is. It's a picture of a plant. You're admitting that you're banning it for political purposes. You're admitting that you do not accept advocacy for marijuana law or promotion of marijuana or political ads for the promotion of marijuana. So you are making decisions, Facebook, censoring decisions, Facebook, based on your own company's personal problems with marijuana. And we cannabis consumers are tired of it. Right now, people by the thousands are changing their Facebook profile picture to an image of a censored marijuana leaf. Facebook petitions are cropping up all over the place for people to call out Facebook on this. And the good news we just got from one of our chatters is that Google has decided to run the censored ad in Google Ads because they realize where Facebook is willing to turn down advertising money and people's eyeballs, Google is smart enough to realize there's money there. There's people there in marijuana law reform and made the sensible decision. All right, we got to go. We'll be back for the second hour, Toker Talk Radio. All sorts of fun stuff to talk about. We're naming names. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Stick around. The replay is at 3, podcast as well. We'll be back soon.
We love the earth.
This is NORML Show Live. The voice of the Marijuana Nation.
Take it out one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.